Well, I'm live, not in the Royal High School woodshop today, but I'm live in my home woodshop. Actually, my parents' home, the home that I grew up with, the place that all my woodworking started. And today, I'm just going to show you real briefly the process of making the sanding block that's in your kit. So most of us have picked up our kit for our bridge. In that bridge kit is a sanding block that you're going to want to use on your parts to smooth them, to rough them up, to flatten or square up the end of something. So we're going to use this sanding block throughout all of our projects, and today I'm just going to show you real briefly what you want to do to get it all put together and complete that project. Now I'm going to start out the process by simply showing you what it would look like if we were in our shop class to make it. So I've got a piece of stock here, and I'm going to measure it at 5 inches, which is about the length that I want the sanding block. And I'm going to take my tri-square that we learned about in shop this last week, and I'm going to draw a line across that board. And then I'm going to take the stock and I'm going to measure the width of the stock. So the sanding block is about 1 3/4 of an inch, 1 3/4 of an inch in its width. And I'll take my tri-square once again and draw that line in there. So I've got a little piece here laid out on my stock. I'm going to go ahead and cut that. I'm going to use 2 saws to do that. I'm going to cut it on the chop saw and then the table saw. Those are the 2 saws that I'm going to use. Here's this sliding compound miter saw that we have in our classroom, and I'm going to start by cross-cutting my board to the right length. Well, I'm at the table saw now. I'm going to make 2 cuts here. The first cut will rip the piece to its right width. Then I'm going to take the piece of stock and I'm going to turn it up on its edge, and I'm going to rip a groove or cut a groove through the center of the piece of wood that will allow me to put the sandpaper in there and lock it down. Alright, so I've cut my piece to about the right size. The next thing I'm going to do is rip a little groove right there using a table saw. Alright, well, I just finished cutting the wedge. So in your kit you should have a wedge, you should have a sanding block. The wedge is going to fit in the sanding block, the groove on the sanding block like that, and that's going to allow me to trap the sandpaper in there. Now, this is what you are going to receive in your kit. I've already done the cutting that you're going to need in the class. Some of that cutting might be done by the student themselves. Now, what is your role here? So when I look at this and take a close look, I see lots of splinters all over this. There's some smudges and pencil marks, things like that I want to clean up so that I make this look really nice. I also noticed that the corners of the block where I've cut it are very sharp. So you can see that the corners have a sharp point on each end. Now, as I use the sanding block to sand, that sharp corner is going to wear a blister in the palm of my hand. So your job is to take the sandpaper that you find in your kit, and to start with, I'm just going to knock the 4 corners off of each of the ends. I'm not trying to necessarily round it, I'm just trying to knock the corner off so that now when I use it and it's sitting in the palm of my hand, it's not a sharp point. And I'll do that on the second end as well. Next, I'm going to work at just making sure all the splinters are sanded off of the end of the board and the pencil marks. Any saw marks or burn marks, marks from the teeth of the saw that are on there, I'll try to get those off as well. The face of each of the pieces can be sanded to get pencil off and marks off of that. Any splinters. The edge of the board is a little bit rough. Now the last thing that I'm going to do is, once it looks nice and clean, is this top edge where there's no groove. That top edge, the corners are really sharp. They're very square, and that squareness can actually cause the sandpaper to tear along there. So I'm just going to take my sandpaper and lightly knock that square corner off. Not a lot, just enough that when I put the sandpaper on there, it's not going to tear it. I don't want a sharp corner. I also don't want a round corner as well. Now I'm going to move to this wedge, and I'm going to work on sanding that down a little bit. You might want to round it a little on the ends. Alright, so there is there's my sanding block. Now, I could put finish on it. I didn't give you any finish in your bag. If you have finish at home, you could put it on there. You could put salad oil or olive oil from your kitchen. You put it on there, you rub it around, you wipe it off with a clean rag, and that puts a nice coat of finish on it. Once you're done with that, then we're ready to actually put the sandpaper on, and I'll show you how to do that next. Alright, well the last thing I need to do is I need to put the sandpaper on my sanding block. So I'm going to start by taking one edge and just putting a fold, kind of in an L shape, on the edge of the sandpaper, because when I'm done and I'm ready to stick the sandpaper down inside the groove, right? There's a groove on this sanding block. When I get to that point, if I don't have a fold on the sandpaper, it makes it really hard to tuck it in. So I'm going to take my sandpaper in the long direction, and I'm going to start by putting the end down a little ways down in the groove, and I'm simply going to start wrapping it all the way around till I get the rest of the sandpaper edge around to the groove. Now I'm going to tuck that edge that's folded is really going to benefit me. I'm going to just start tucking that with my thumb here. I'm going to start tucking it down in there. Now that it's down in and tight, the wedge is going to, I push that wedge down in there, and that wedge is going to hold it way down in. And there's the finished product. There's our finished sanding block ready to be used on our project. Alright, take a few minutes to get that all worked on, sanded, cleaned up. You can put some finish on it like salad oil or olive oil if you would like. Let it soak in a little bit, wipe it all off, let it dry for a while, and then you're ready to wrap your sandpaper on there and wedge it in so that it's ready to be used on your project.